Imagine that everything you think you know about female desire is an illusion, that love is not tenderness, but a strategy as old as power itself. Machiavelli understood this centuries before. Behind every sweet gesture, there is a calculation. Behind every silence, a test. He deciphered a pattern so dark that he had to hide it to avoid being destroyed. Men ignored it, women perfected it, and once you see what he discovered, you will never look at a smile the same way again. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and stay until the end of the video. And while you're at it, like, share, and enjoy the content. Listen, most men fail with women, not because they are stupid or ugly, they fail because they were sold a lie so beautifully packaged that they don't even realize they are living inside an illusion. They were told, be yourself, as if authenticity was ever enough. They were told, treat her like a queen, as if servitude ever ignited desire. They were promised that love conquers all, while the courts fill with divorces and the streets fill with lonely men who have no idea what went wrong. And do you know the cruelest part of all this? While you were following those rules word for word, there were others who ignored them completely and got exactly what you were seeking. Not because they were better men, but because they understood something you were never taught. Now, let me tell you something I discovered years ago. Something I struggled to accept. I too believed in romantic love, in the idea that if you were good, noble, and devoted, she would eventually see it. I spent months being the perfect man for someone who barely noticed I existed. And when I finally got tired and walked away, guess what happened? Suddenly, I was interesting. Suddenly, my absence was worth more than all the presents I had given her. That's when I understood that female desire doesn't work the way we were told. It turns out that Machiavelli, that Florentine genius known for The Prince, discovered something far more dangerous than political strategy. In his private writings, the ones that circulated only within intimate Florentine circles, he spoke of what he called the hidden dynamics of female choice. These were not public lectures. They were closed-door meetings, forbidden conversations, where every word challenged everything society claimed was correct. Because what Machiavelli saw was this: behind every act of affection, there is a power transaction. Desire is not a pure emotion, it is a strategy, and women, consciously or unconsciously, have mastered it from a very young age. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you seen a woman complain that all men are the same, yet choose the exact same type again and again? How many times have you heard her say she wants someone stable and good, but she falls for the one who unsettles her? It's not coincidence, it's a pattern, a code that repeats itself across cultures and across eras. And listen, if this resonates with you, follow me on the channel, because we are only scratching the surface. Machiavelli understood that humans do not act according to what they say, but according to what benefits them. He applied this brutal insight to politics, but he also applied it to something far more intimate: attraction. And what he discovered was so disturbing that his own contemporaries tried to bury it. Because accepting this truth means admitting that romantic love, as it was painted to you, is a fairy tale. The truth is darker, and paradoxically, far more liberating. He documented case after case of noble women who abandoned perfect men for others who treated them with indifference. He observed how absence created more desire than constant presence, how mystery triumphed over transparency, how unpredictability defeated stability. It wasn't cruelty, it was instinct. And here's what no one tells you. When you become predictable, when she already knows everything you will do, when your attention is always available, you lose all your value. Because the human brain doesn't value what is guaranteed. It values what it must conquer. So, what do you do with this information? Do you deny it because it's uncomfortable? Or do you start seeing the world as it is, not as you wish it to be? Because once you see the pattern, you can no longer pretend it doesn't exist. And believe me, there is much more to uncover about how this game truly works. Now that you know the essentials, something deeper awaits you, something Machiavelli called the hidden cycle. And once you understand it, everything you thought you knew about women will click in a way you never imagined. If what you just heard stirred something inside you, if you feel that someone is finally speaking the truth without filters, then stay. Subscribe to the channel, not as an empty gesture, but because you understand this knowledge isn't available to everyone, and those who possess it play with an advantage. Now here's where things get interesting. Once you accept that female desire works differently than what you were taught, the obvious question is, why? Why does a woman say she wants one thing, but but respond to something completely different. The answer lies in something Machiavelli identified centuries ago in the courts of Florence. He observed how aristocratic women wielded power without ever formally holding it. They could not govern like men, but they dominated those who did govern, and they did it with an invisible tool, perception. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. Power is not seized by force when you are physically weaker. Power is obtained by controlling what others desire from you. And women have learned this from the cradle. Let me tell you about a case he documented. She was known as the she-wolf of Florence, a noble woman, refined, educated, the perfect image of virtue, but in private, she played with her admirers as if they were chess pieces. She would give them her attention one day, then disappear for weeks. No explanation, no warning, only silence. And here's what's fascinating. The more her absences ignored them, the more desperate they became. Her strategy wasn't love, it was uncertainty, because she had learned something most men never understand. What you deny becomes valuable. What you withhold becomes a treasure. Machiavelli traced the origin of this behavior back to her childhood. At 6 years old, she watched her mother slowly dismantle her father's reputation without ever raising her voice. Through strategic silences, through well-placed tears, through the skill of making him feel guilty for things he hadn't even done. The girl learned early. Power is not what you say. It's what you make the other person feel. And here's the disturbing part. This is not conscious manipulation in most cases. It's programming. Women grow up seeing that vulnerability, used correctly, generates protection. That beauty opens doors. That silence at the right moment is worth more than 1,000 words. They are not malicious, they are strategic. And strategy, practiced from childhood, becomes instinct. The truth is, there is a huge gap between what women say they want publicly and what excites them in private. In public, they will say they want stability, kindness, a man who listens. And yes, they want that, for a specific type of relationship. But desire, that fire that makes them obsessed, does not ignite with security. It ignites with tension. Think of it this way. The human brain is designed to survive, not to be happy. From an evolutionary standpoint, a woman couldn't afford to choose poorly. She needed someone who could protect her, but also someone other women desired, because if others desired him, it was a signal that he was worth it. This explains something you've probably seen. A woman can ignore a man for months, but the moment another woman shows interest in him, something suddenly awakens. It's not insecurity, it's biology. Her brain tags as valuable what others desire. And here's the detail no one tells you. When you become too accessible, when your attention is always available, she stops seeing you as a conquest. She sees you as something guaranteed. And what is guaranteed does not generate emotion. It generates comfort, and comfort kills desire. Now, I know this sounds contradictory. So, should you treat her badly? No, that's not the point. The point is that attraction is not an act of justice. It's not, if I'm good, she should reciprocate. It's an emotional phenomenon that responds to specific patterns, and one of those patterns is polarity. She needs to feel there is something to conquer, that your time, your energy, your attention are not infinite, that if she doesn't value you, she will lose something real. Men who understand this do not chase, do not beg, do not exhaust themselves proving they are the best option. They simply are. And that calmness, that absence of need, is magnetic. Because Machiavelli was right about one thing. He who shows desperation loses power. He who maintains calmness gains it. And if this made you think differently, leave a piece of advice in the comments that could help other men. Something you learned the hard way, something it took you years to understand. Because together, we can piece together the full map. Now, what you just read is only the first layer. Because there is something even deeper, something Machiavelli discovered and called the shadow cycle. An invisible mechanism that governs almost every decision she makes about you without her even realizing it, and this is where things get complicated. Because everything I just told you about female desire, about polarity, about tension, has a dark side. No one ever wants to mention. A mechanism so deep it operates beneath consciousness itself. Machiavelli called it the shadow cycle. It is not something women consciously decide. It is a biological program, an invisible force that guides almost all of their decisions without them even noticing. And once you understand how it works, you start seeing patterns where before you only saw chaos. Let me show you this from another angle. Think about the last time you heard a woman say with absolute conviction, "I want a good man, stable, someone who treats me well," and then you watched her fall madly in love with someone who was the exact opposite. Was she lying? No, she was stating her conscious truth. But her subconscious was responding to a completely different programming. What she says she wants is what her rational mind considers correct. What truly turns her on is what her instinct recognizes as genetically valuable. And these two things are often polar opposites. Machiavelli documented a case in 1501 that illustrates this perfectly. A countess abandoned her husband, a rich, educated man of impeccable social standing. She left him for a plebeian with no education and no fortune. The scandal was enormous. How could a woman of her class do something so irrational? The answer was brutal. Her husband had become predictable. He adored her. He obeyed her every whim. He constantly sought her approval. He was kind, perfect, and invisible. Because when someone gives you everything effortlessly, you lose all interest. There's no tension, no story, but the plebeian lover? He ignored her. He disappeared for days. He didn't beg her. He didn't worship her. And that indifference drove her insane. Her brain interpreted that distance as value. If he didn't need her, he must be someone important. If other women could have him, she had to earn him. And there lies the cycle. What she gets easily, she despises. What she has to conquer, she values. It's not cruelty, it's the way her biology is programmed to filter options. Now, the funny thing is, this applies in reverse too, just differently. Men do the same thing with other aspects. Machiavelli wrote that people forget the death of their father faster than the loss of their inheritance. It sounds cold, but it's true. We value what we had to work for. What comes easily leaves no mark. So, what does this mean for you? It means that when you try too hard, when you lay all your cards on the table from the start, you're sending the wrong signal. You're telling her primitive brain, "I'm easy to get, I'm not a scarce resource, you can have me whenever you want." And her subconscious responds, "If he's that easy, he probably isn't worth much." Now, here's something that might sound contradictory to what I said before. It's not about being a jerk, it's not about treating her badly, it's about maintaining your own center, having a life that doesn't revolve entirely around her, being someone who is interested, yes, but never desperate. Because there's a massive difference between being indifferent and being at peace. Indifference is cold and calculated. Peacefulness is authentic. It's the calm of a man who knows his value and doesn't need external validation to confirm it. Women can smell desperation from a mile away, but they can also feel the authenticity of a man who is simply okay with himself. And that second option? That one is magnetic. No one tells you this, but women aren't just looking for love, they're looking for narrative tension. They want to feel like they're part of a story, not a routine. That's why the shadow cycle activates with uncertainty, in those moments when they don't know if you'll stay or leave, when your presence is a gift, not a guarantee. And this inevitably triggers what Machiavelli called the testing mechanism. Without even realizing it, women test emotional resilience. They create conflict just to see if you crumble. They provoke to measure your reaction. It's not malice, it's survival instinct. She needs to know if your emotional frame is stronger than hers, because if you break under a simple test, how will you support her when life truly becomes difficult? Men who collapse under these trials lose all value in her eyes, but those who remain calm, those who don't react with despair or anger, activate something primal in her. That calm tells her, this man is in control. This man is secure. And now, I want your opinion on something. What works best to demonstrate that calm in the face of one of her emotional tests? A. Responding with logic and rational explanations. Or B. Simply maintaining silence and composure without justifying yourself. Write A or B in the comments and briefly explain why you chose that option. I want to see which approach dominates in this video, because here's the uncomfortable truth. Attraction is not democratic. It doesn't reward goodness or fairness, it rewards polarity, It rewards tension. It rewards those who understand that desire isn't built with sweet words. It's built with magnetic presence. Cleopatra understood this centuries before any of us. She didn't seduce Julius Caesar or Mark Antony through submission. She seduced them through challenge, through demand, through moments of warmth followed by strategic distance. Her beauty wasn't the weapon, her emotional control was. Each absence of hers created desire. Each return was relief. That rhythm, that oscillation between having her and losing her, was the enchantment itself. And those powerful men, accustomed to conquering empires, became slaves to a woman who mastered the cycle. So I ask you, do you want to continue being the good man who ends up in the comfort zone? Or do you want to be the one who understands the real rules of the game? Because once you see the pattern, you can no longer pretend it doesn't exist. And believe me, what comes next is even deeper. Because there are specific techniques, psychological mechanisms you can activate not just to attract her, but to become someone she will never forget. So when you put all this together, when you see the complete map, you realize something that changes the game completely. It's not about technique, it's about understanding the very nature of desire. Because listen, you can learn 1,000 tactics, 1,000 ways to send messages, 1,000 conversation strategies, but if you don't understand the fundamental principle, you will remain lost. And the principle is this: female desire isn't sparked by what you give, it's sparked by what you provoke. Think carefully about that. Everything we've discussed so far points to the same truth. The countess who abandoned her perfect husband, the she-wolf of Florence who controlled through her absence, the shadow cycle that operates beneath consciousness, these are all examples of the same pattern. Emotional tension generates desire far more than stability. And here's what no one clearly explains to you. When a woman says she wants stability, she means it sincerely. But she speaks through her conscious mind. Her rational mind knows that stability is good for building a life. But her body, her nervous system, her brain chemistry, they respond to something else. They respond to contrast, to calculated unpredictability, to the feeling that with you, she can feel alive, not just safe. Machiavelli documented this in his private observations. He noted how the women of the court responded in completely different ways to two types of men. Those who begged for their attention were discarded without pity. Those who maintained emotional distance, who did not abandon their principles to please them, they became objects of fascination. It wasn't that she wanted cruel men, she wanted men with their own center, men whose lives didn't revolve around her, because that told her something important. This man has purpose. This man has options. This man doesn't need me to feel complete. And that absence of need is magnetic. Now, here's the part many misinterpret. This doesn't mean becoming cold or calculating. It's not about playing mind games or manipulating. It's something much deeper. To build a life so solid that your attention becomes valuable through genuine scarcity. When you have projects that excite you, when you have goals to pursue, when you have a life that fulfills you, you automatically become less available. And this unavailability isn't a strategy. It's the natural consequence of living with purpose. Women feel this. They can tell the difference between a man who is faking being busy and a man who genuinely has important things to do. The first feels false, the second is irresistible. And here's the key revelation. She doesn't want to be your sole source of happiness. That's far too much responsibility, far too much pressure. What she wants is to be part of your extraordinary life, not the center of your empty one. When you understand this, everything changes. You no longer chase her, you no longer beg. You no longer crumble when she pulls away. Because you have something bigger than your relationship with her. You have a solid relationship with yourself. The masters of seduction throughout history understood this instinctively. Casanova would disappear for weeks, not as a tactic, but because he had adventures, projects, other interests. When he returned, he brought stories, he brought mystery, he brought a life that existed beyond any one woman. And women went crazy for him, not because he was the most handsome or the richest, but because his presence was an event, not a constant. Every encounter with him was memorable because he was unpredictable. You never knew which version of him you would find. Napoleon did the same with Josephine. He wrote her letters full of passion, but also full of demands, reproach, and emotional distance whenever he felt she was becoming too comfortable. And these emotional roller coasters kept her hooked for years. It wasn't cruelty, it was polarity. It was keeping alive the tension that makes desire breathe. So, how do you apply this without becoming toxic? It's simple. Stop making her your main project. Invest in yourself. Build something that matters more to you than the approval of any woman. And when she enters your life, let her be an addition to something already complete, not the missing piece that makes you feel whole. Because when you stop needing her, she begins to need you. When you stop chasing her, she starts wondering why. And when your attention becomes selective, she begins to value it. And in the end, as Machiavelli said, fortune favors the prepared, not the one who waits for things to improve on their own. If you want the dynamics to change, you must change first. You need to stop playing by the rules you were taught and start understanding the rules that truly move the board. It's not about being the best man for her. It's about being such a complete man that your presence becomes a privilege, not a right. About becoming someone whose attention is worth earning. Because once you reach that point, everything I've told you makes sense. The shadow cycle works in your favor. Attention is created naturally, and she not only desires you, she respects you. And that combination, desire plus respect, is what builds something lasting. It's not blind passion that fades in weeks. It's a deep attraction that endures because you never became predictable. You never let your life revolve solely around her. So the question now isn't whether this works. The question is, are you willing to do the internal work this requires? Because there are no shortcuts here, no magic formulas. There is only one brutal truth. Either you build a life that gives you value, or you will continue begging for attention. Listen, everything I've shared with you isn't theory. It's the map most will never see. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The world rewards those who see things as they are, not as they should be. If this stirred something in you, if you finally feel someone is telling you the truth without filters, then don't leave just yet. Leave a piece of advice in the comments for other men. Something you've learned the hard way, something it took you years to understand. Because together, we reconstruct the full map. And if you want more content like this, raw and unfiltered, subscribe to the channel, give this a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. This isn't just a gesture, it's a statement, a strike against deception. Because the world doesn't change when men shout louder, it changes when they see with clarity. And that clarity, that understanding, is your power.